Chappy. This is Junior. Keep it locked here. AdrenalineUndergroundRadio.com.
Gentle sun and a summer breeze, lying underneath the trees, and I'm on my own, but I'm not alone, 'cause I can feel you here with me. In my heart you will always be. You're the one I love, the one I dream of. Things will change and time will pass, but we will stay the same. And if I fall, you will rescue me, and I will do the same. I'll put my feet in the shifting sand. You came along and you held my hand and you steadied me. Said we would always be. And if you go, I will follow you. And if I go, you will follow me too, because I've got you, and you've got me too. Things will change and time will pass, we will stay the same. And if you fall, I will rescue you, you will do the same. Life can be a winding road. Well, it's easier when you can share the load like we do. Things will change and time will pass, we will stay the same. And if I fall, you will rescue me, and I will do the same. Things will change and time will pass, we will stay the same. And if you fall, I will rescue you, you will do the same. We will stay 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 the same. Stay the same.
Chappy and Jrs Podcast, out on all your favorite media streaming platforms, featuring raw and uncensored
Hi,
Fridays.
this is Mickey.
And this is Mary.
We're from Aldo Rocks, and you're listening to my good friends at Adrenaline Underground.
All right, so let's just kick this off, and we want to welcome you coming on to Chappy and Jrs Podcast. I am Chappy.
And I'm Junior.
Junior's over here. This is my son. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name's Eric Brombacher. I'm the singer-songwriter for a Canadian band called Eric and the Sioux, and we're based out of Toronto.
Okay. And what is And the Sioux? Where did you guys come up with the name?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town in northern Ontario called Sault Ste. Marie. And if you're from Sault Ste. Marie, everybody calls it the Sioux. So it's spelled differently. It's a French name. It means the Rapids of St. Mary's, so Sault Ste. Marie. But everyone's style is people that are from the Sioux also, like a lot of local businesses will write Soo as SOO. So I called my band, kind of named it after my hometown, called it Eric and the Soo.
Okay. There you go. There you go. That's pretty. So, how long have you been doing music? You as well as solo or in the band?
Yeah. So, I guess I was a bit of a late bloomer. I didn't start playing the guitar till I was 19. I didn't put my first band together until I was 32. That was, and then, but so that would have been, so 32. Yeah, that's about 2004. So I guess I've been in bands since then. Eric and the Soo. So my first band was called the Septembers, and then we were mostly a cover band, and then we kind of traded a few members out, and then we became Shatterbox, and we put out so Shatterbox formed in about 2009. We put out about 3 albums with that band. In that band, I was the guitar player. I was the lead guitarist, and kind of co-songwriter with the lead singer, Frank. And then that band kind of fell apart in 2015. And then also in 2015 is when I founded the current band, Eric and the Soo.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So then, why was there such a big gap there between your late blooming till when? Like, were you doing solo stuff, or were you just like living life as a young man?
Yeah, just living life. I mean, like I said, I didn't start playing guitar till I was 19, and then I went to university. So, I had my guitar with me at university. And so those are the years I just think of, I was jamming and learning and playing, mostly just on my own in the bedroom. I was studying engineering, so it was a pretty intense educational experience. So most of my kind of time and effort went into my schoolwork. I went and got a master's degree as well, so again, pretty intensive education there. Was still playing guitar all the way through and, learning my chops, doing my own thing, but not really seriously because I was mostly focused on school and career. Then once I finished my master's degree, I finally had a little bit of money in my pocket, so I started taking serious guitar lessons in Toronto from a couple of well-respected local guitar teachers. And mostly I was focused on my career, and it wasn't, in the early days of my career, I was traveling extensively, mostly across the U.S. and Canada. So it was just not possible to put a band together. I made a slight career change in my early 30s, and that partially because I did want to, start focusing on more artistic pursuits. So I took a job that had a bit less travel, and that allowed me to start to put my first band together. And that was the Septembers in 2004.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So, do you have a particular way of writing your songs?
Yeah, good question. That's morphed over time. In the early days, when I didn't really know what I was doing, you just try to write riffs and then you jam a bunch of chords together and hope that there's a bit of a lick or a riff in there, and then you just float the vocal over top and hope that it sounds okay. So the early songs were very, I would say, guitar focused, with kind of the vocal melody being kind of an afterthought. That was mostly when I was with Shatterbox, but even towards the later stages of being in Shatterbox, I kind of noticed, or maybe my songwriting progressed, and I figured out for me personally that I like actually writing from the perspective of the vocal melody first. So especially with the Eric and the Soo stuff, I write the lyrics and the vocal melody kind of at the same time, and then I try to fit the chords underneath that will support the vocal melody.
Right. It's actually, I'm actually going through that personally right now. Like, I just one day, we had a tragic accident, and just I've been sitting on some lyrics that were in my head down, and now I'm kind of been trying to figure out a way to put notes to it, because our family we're musically inclined also. That's why we enjoy doing these.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that was. Sorry, I just had to close the door.
You're fine. I heard the sirens in the background.
Life in the big city, right? Yeah, I mean, and I think that's it too. You do get stuck, and you do kind of you do run out of ways to, and maybe coming at it from a different angle helps. So, a big epiphany for me was, recognizing, at least for the type of music that I like to listen to and I like to create, vocal melody really is important. And I think, I think it's tempting to ignore that and think that that's a secondary thing. But I really focus on the vocal melody, and then, you try to fit the chords underneath. It's harder, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't just float a melody over top of an existing chord structure. You have to figure out what chord works under these different, melody lines that I have in my head. But I do feel like I end up with a song that's more melodically pleasing. Another thing I do when I'm stuck is I try to write on an instrument that I'm not comfortable with. So, I mean, my main instrument is the guitar, but I do write a lot on the piano, partially because I'm not good at it, and it kind of forces me in a different direction. Instead of going back to the comfort zone, to the stuff it kind of pushes me in a way that, so I end up writing chord progressions and melodies that I wouldn't write on guitar. So, that's another way to unstick yourself. If you're
right. I might have to go get me a new piano, electric piano, keyboard. So my kid here, he actually plays piano. So
okay.
Might have to maybe invest in a set of keys so I can maybe put my lyrics to something he's coming up with. It might work.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, writing from the piano it's really neat. Like I've written some really interesting stuff. I end up often going back and then recording it on guitar anyways, but I end up coming up with interesting melodies and chords. Yeah.
So what would you say has been excuse me, what would you say have been your music influences then throughout your career so far? Yeah.
Wide ranging, I would say. But yeah, I mean, key influences for me, AC/DC has always been a massive influence. Probably the first rock and roll band that I went crazy over back in my early youth.
Right.
And, there's something, visceral or almost, primal that drives you to AC/DC's music. And looking at it more from a cerebral perspective and looking back at it now, I realize part of what makes them so great is their use of space.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot going on, but there's also a lot of dead space in their songs. You think of heavy metal, Highway to Hell. Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
Right? That space is as important as the notes. So that influences my approach. I'm also a huge fan of the Eagles. So I do like harmonies, and I try to use harmonies. I like guys like Graham Parsons and the Flying Burrito Brothers. That kind of bluegrass Americana country, cosmic country sound I really like. Tom Petty's a huge influence. Neil Young is a big influence. John Hyatt, John Prine. Yeah, it's I'm kind of all Pink Floyd as well. Pink Floyd, massive influence for me. Alan Parsons, so Graham Parsons on the bluegrass country, cosmic country side, and then Alan Parsons on the psychedelic side. And then, I love all the old country, like Merle Haggard and George Jones and Johnny Cash, Buck Owens, all of those guys. I also like the psychedelic, progressive stuff. I like Rush. I like Yes. I like, I guess I'm all over the place. And
you like a lot of the music. I mean, you like a lot of different styles of music, which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
I think if people personally speaking, I think if people listen to more style of music, it can influence them and maybe have them branch out, take a risk on something they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, yeah, very much.